All right, hello all, and welcome back to Survivor Game Show Network. Tonight we have an exit interview for Survivor Exile Island. I am one of the hosts, Ian Moorhead, joined as always by my co-host, Morgan Jackson, and Queen of the Question, Denny. Tonight, we are joined by our third place finisher and our robbed goddess of the season, Mike Simmons. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys today?
Doing well. I said it when the season ended, that watching you at Final Tribal was like hell. Especially, we grew up, Mike and I have grown up together, and watching it back was not any better. It sucked again. But I think, like I said before the end of the season, I picked you to win, and I think you played better than I thought you could have, or you thought you could have, and honestly, probably better than anybody thought. So regardless of your spot placing, you should be proud of the game you played. And I'll turn it over to the Queen of the Question to get started.
Hey, Simmons, I didn't grow up with you, and that was hard for me to watch too. So.
I feel the same way.
Okay, fine.
I only blame you guys for that.
I want to get into some of the pre-merge stuff just briefly. You had an original 5 with Greg, Lauren, Alex, and Lilly. It seemed like you were a little hesitant to work with Lauren. Did you have what was it about Lauren?
Well, at first I was on board with Lauren, but it all started from that Exile Island trip she had where she came back and everybody knew she had either an idol or an advantage. She's too good of a player not to. And it was just I get it. She wouldn't tell you because it's that early in the game. But if you're trying to make an alliance with somebody, it's we know you have something, just tell us, but she's not telling us. So does she really trust me? That type of thing. And then kind of skipping forward a little bit, when I went to Exile with Lauren and I'm sitting there doing the clue, and I figured she had one, and she was like, oh yeah, that's interesting, when I was telling her about it. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't gonna, I can't trust her at that point. So that's really the only reason why. I mean, that happened pretty early on. So I wish we could have worked together a little bit more, but that's kind of what happened.
So had she not messed up during that trip to Exile, would you have been open? Because even before that, it seemed like a little bit there was something there.
Yeah, I mean, it started when she got back from Exile originally, but I think if we were on Exile together and she was like, hey, listen, I have this idol, or she told me she already solved the clue or something, I think it could have been beneficial for both of us, but it was nothing. So I was just on a wild goose chase doing the idol clue, and she was just sitting there yeah, enjoy it. You're not going to get anything from this. So
backtracking just a little to that first swap when you chose Zucker, just wondering why you chose him.
I hate to say it, but literally no reason. He looked like a friendly face, someone I could get along with, so I kind of just went with it. We had the same name. There wasn't any secret plan behind it. It was kind of just I have no idea. My first pick was going to be Austin, and it could be a bad play to pick Austin. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, okay, Connor picked me first or something. So I literally had second pick. I was like, as long as Lauren doesn't pick Austin, and Lauren picked Austin. So maybe it worked out better for me that way, because people were said hey, Mike knows Austin, Austin knows Mike, and they're trying to work together. So in the end, it probably ended up working out. But at the time, I wanted to pick Austin, but ended up going with Michael.
All right, so you ended up being approached by Andrew. He wanted a 3 with you, him, and Lilly. You're approached by John and Zucker for a 3 with them, and approached by Connor for a 3 with you, him, and Lilly, which would have been wild to see, that last one. So you
that would have been some good entertainment.
All these people approaching you must have felt good.
It was weird because I didn't know, like being like my first game, I didn't know if people were really like playing me like super hard, like, hey, everyone says this to everybody type of thing. Like, oh, they're telling everybody let's do a final three, or they're telling everybody let's do a final three. But I don't think that's how it was really happening. I felt like I was kind of actually like, I don't know if all those people really wanted to go final three, but at least they wanted to work with me in some capacity. So it was like a weird mind game for me where it was like, do they really like, is this how this is going to go? Like, they really want to work with me like that? Like, it was that easy. Like, I didn't really talk to Connor at all. He was like, hey, let's work together. Andrew and I had a good connection. And then John, obviously, that was an interesting combination.
So before the Zucker vote, we see a confessional with you where you're saying like you're sick of everyone being nice, you're ready for people to start throwing out names, and you say, put some hair on your chest. So were you throwing out names at that time?
No. No. That was me being like, I was told right before Tribal that Zucker was going home, and I was like, and I should have known, like, survivor instinct should have kicked in. It's like when everyone's like beating around the bush, it's probably because they're not telling you something. So I probably should have realized like something weird's going on here, but I had immunity, so it was like, why, like, what weird thing could be going on where like they don't, like, I'm not going home. So like I didn't really understand why. I mean, they thought I was closer to Zucker than I think like that we actually were. So yeah, no, I wasn't throwing any names around, but at that point I was just kind of sick of everyone just, like I said, beating around the bush and just like, I don't know, whatever you guys want. Literally, that's what everybody was saying.
And you threw your vote on Lauren.
Absolutely.
You knew it was just a rogue vote, right?
Yep.
So
yep.
Why?
But the funny thing is that there was never even talks of voting for Lauren that time. Like, she wasn't even the name we came up with before that vote, or like the fake name, I guess it would have been. It was kind of like me just like saying, like, putting Lauren on notice a little bit, like, I want you out, but at the same time, it was more of just like, I don't care. I'm gonna vote for someone who probably isn't gonna get mad for me voting for him, because I felt like Lauren, she does get mad at that kind of stuff, but I felt like she, like, I don't know, she wouldn't have cared because she knew that she wasn't going home. Yeah. Yeah, that was just like a fun little vote. I don't know. I wasn't happy with the Zucker decision, so I was like, you know what, screw it. We're just gonna go Lauren.
Is there anybody that was happy with the Zucker vote?
Yeah, Lauren. Everyone else said it was dumb.
But the thing was, like, I don't know why, like, I get why they didn't tell me, or at least they thought why they shouldn't tell me, because they think I would have, like, told Zucker and, like, blew it up or something. But I think not telling me, like, made me, like, more, like, mad. Like, it was like, I won immunity. Like, I was willing to really do anything. There was no one that I said, like, was off limits or, like, off the board. Like, and everyone just thought I was, like, super close with Zucker and John, which, if you saw, Zucker, if I'm remembering correctly, Zucker didn't even vote for who he told me he was going to vote for that round. He said he was willing to work with, like, the group that we discussed before, and I think it was I can't remember off the top of my head, but he told me something and he didn't even vote that way. I don't even know if that was in the edit or not. So it was like, him and I that early on weren't, like, we tried, but it didn't really work. Like, we were good friends, but working together wise, it didn't really go. I don't think it got as deep as people were thinking we were.
Yeah. So you win your second individual immunity, and it was you and Austin battling it out with the pencils and the dice. And I don't know if you watched his exit, but I asked him if he would be open to a rematch, and he said absolutely. So are you willing to battle it out with him again?
I'm willing to do it. I don't know if I can do better than I did the first time, so I don't know.
Well, there's nothing on the line this time, but, like, maybe some bragging, right? So
yeah, it's an individual reward or something, you know.
Were you worried after 2 individual immunity wins that maybe your target was growing a little bigger?
I was. I tried to play it off like I think Lauren said very early on, like these are minute to win it challenges. So I really was like, yeah, anybody can win these, like, you know. And I don't think that really mattered, but you know, I was definitely thinking like, if I don't win like more immunities, like I have to at least do my part on the social game to make sure I don't go home when I don't win the next immunity challenge. So I was definitely aware of my threat level rising a little bit from winning a couple immunities for sure.
All right, moving ahead, you get Mackenzie to trust you, and then you say, blah, 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 let's vote her the fuck out. So was that like a sweet victory?
Yeah, to say the least, yeah. Yeah, that one was good. That was probably my favorite line from myself of the season, for sure.
Yeah, you watch it back and you're like, yeah, that was me.
Yeah,
that felt.
He texted me that line. He's like, that was
oh, really?
Yeah, he sent that to me.
I was actually talking to Zucker earlier, and he said, oh, I loved watching that part back. And then I wrote it like word for word what you had said. And I'm like, yeah, I'm bringing that up tonight. Don't you worry.
Yeah, that was definitely a highlight for me.
Yeah, it was a highlight for a lot of people, I think. All right, so moving ahead, Lauren and John go out of the game. And then they come back from Exile to battle it out. One of them gets the chance to come back in. It was pretty evident you didn't really want to work with either of them. And you ended up saying that John was an annoying kid at school that won't go away. So I was curious, when those two were battling it out, who were you hoping was coming back into the game and why?
I was hoping some miracle, maybe they both dropped their stuff at the same time. No one comes back, like maybe an extra twist in the game where it was all a sick joke. But no, at the time, I think I wanted John to come back because Lauren and I weren't really, I knew Lauren was closer with Greg than anybody else at the time. So it was like, if someone's going to come back, I want someone that's going to try to probably work with me rather than somebody else. And I think that was John. So I definitely was rooting a little bit more for John than Lauren.
All right. And then you win your third individual immunity challenge. So now your target should be growing a little bit bigger, but I think you did have like a pretty good alliance. I mean, you had Greg, you had Lilly, you had Alex. You guys seem to be quite the force. You knew that Greg was going to win the game though, had he gotten to the end, and you kept stressing that you were going to have to take care of that at some point. Would you have voted him out at 6 if he didn't use the advantage? The safety
100%.
Power.
Yeah. Alex was talking to me for like the 2 votes before that. He's like, hey, do you want to get Greg? Like, do you want to think about Greg? And I was like, I thought about it, but I was like, not yet. Like, I think it's a little bit too early for that, like at 7 or whatever it was, or 8. And, but I think at that time, if he didn't use it, Alex and I both, I think we talked about it before, and if he doesn't use it, we're going to vote for him. Austin would have voted for him. So I definitely would have voted for Greg. I don't know what the repercussions of that would have been, but I would have felt confident with myself, Alex, and Austin to go forward with that 3 moving forward, if that's the way it worked out.
All right. When Austin won immunity at the final 5, which you said, like, that's how it goes in Survivor, right? I loved when you said that because it's so true. We see it happen all the time. But if he hadn't won, who goes there, Greg or Austin?
I would have tried really hard for Greg, and I want to say Alex would have gone for it. I would have rather have kept Austin, and I think Alex would have felt the same way. I think if Greg sneaks in and is still around, that's just a bigger, like, there's no reason for it at that point. Like, he could easily win the next immunity or the next 2, whatever it is, and sneak to the finals, and nobody really wanted that. No offense, Greg, you're awesome, but we did, at least Alex, Austin, and I, we didn't want you in the finals because you're tough to beat. I know Lilly wanted you there, but you know, that's just respect to your game. You played a great game. So I think if, someone else would have won immunity, I would have liked to go Greg. Austin definitely would have won Greg. So it would have been really up to Alex if I could try to convince him. And I think just with the way the conversations went with him prior to that, I think he would have.
I think Alex would have messaged you to vote Greg before you would have had an opportunity to message him.
I think so.
Yeah. All right. So then you win your 4th individual immunity.
And that shit wasn't even close.
No.
It wasn't
was
even
ridiculous.
close.
I was like, it's over.
Yeah, that was watching that challenge back, I think you could have done that challenge twice before anybody got it done the first time.
I didn't. Well, at the time I was doing it, you can't tell what other people are doing. So I didn't know how far or how close other people were to me. So it was kind of weird watching it back. Because I thought it was much closer. I thought Alex was a lot closer. He was pretty close, but I didn't know Lilly and Austin were struggling that bad.
Oh yeah, big time. Did you not wonder if Lilly and Alex were tossing your name around?
I was, but my question was to who? Who are they tossing my name around? To each other? Fine, that's cool. But Austin wasn't going to vote me out. I'm pretty certain of it. So, are you talking about the Final Four there? Or
yeah.
before that? Yeah. The reason I was so it kind of goes back to the gym vote. They Greg won a gym, Lilly won a gym. I did not, or they wanted Austin. I'm sorry. I really wanted Jim to go because I knew if I can keep Austin in the game as long as possible, that's better for my game 100% because Austin's someone that's probably not going to vote for me if it's between me or Alex or me or Lilly. But if it was Jim and I had, I can count on one hand how many conversations we've had. And, he's a great guy. It's just we didn't really communicate. We didn't talk a lot of game, a lot of strategy. We weren't really a number for each other. So it's if Jim stays in the game, then it makes it a lot easier for Alex, Lilly, or Greg or whoever it is to use him to vote me out. So I felt, to answer your question, the reason why I was comfortable was because I was able to keep Austin in the game at the gym vote so that I didn't have to worry as much. Because Austin and Alex, they didn't strategize at all. And I know Austin and Lilly didn't strategize together at all. So that made me sit very comfortably knowing that it was okay, I'm pretty certain if I don't win this Final Four immunity challenge or whatever it is, that they're not going to all three vote me out. But I knew that I would have a better decision. It would be more of my decision to make if I did win it, having Austin there, because Austin will vote with me if I talk to him.
So speaking of that was something that I was curious watching because you said a couple times, I think I can trust Austin. You also said numerous times, I trust no one in this game. You said that many, many times. And I know how everything starts getting in your head and you do feel like you can't trust anyone. But Austin being a lifelong friend, if you can't trust a lifelong friend, who can you trust? Why were you not wanting to align more so with him than you were with Lilly and Alex?
Well, a lot of it started early on when we weren't on the same tribes for ever. I didn't see him until the merge, and there was 3 tribe swaps, kind of 3 different tribes between then. So it was I didn't have any conversation with him beforehand. And then we get to the merge and his number 1 is Mackenzie, who's my number 10 or whoever it was, whatever number. It was the complete opposite of the spectrum where it was shoot, how is this going to work? I'm trying to get out Mackenzie and he's talking with Mackenzie to get out other people. So it was I don't know how to make that work. But then getting down to when, there's less people in the game, I definitely messed that up a little bit. But, part of me, I wasn't as tight with Austin as I probably should have been going down to, final 6, 5, 4, all that. Part of that goes into the knowing the Moorheads and how untrustworthy. No, I'm kidding. No, it was one of those things where it kind of started early on and trickled down, but I definitely should have capitalized on that a lot more. especially late in the game.
Yeah, so then you have the choice to either write Austin's name down, or you can write Lilly's name down, forcing a tie. Production's in the background going, force the tie, like to each other, right? And I was thinking, like, we saw you, you're sitting there going, I don't know what to do. And you're going back and forth. I mean, you were in that voting room for a while.
Yeah.
So you struggled with it. But what made you just say, fuck it, I'm voting Austin?
Mm-hmm. So, and honestly, if I just would have heard a whisper say like, yeah, force a tie, I would have forced a tie.
Well, we would never do that.
I know. I was just like wanting every reason to force a tie, but I was like convinced that if I force a tie, like Austin wins his way to the finals, then I'm like, oh shit. Like I just sealed my own fate here. So that's what I was mostly afraid of if I did force a tie, is like they'll get a lot of jury credit for winning the challenge going into the finals. Like that's pretty hype. And you know, I was a little bit afraid of how, you know, this was my first game, so I didn't know how serious people were going to be voting on like tribal council, like the jury. I didn't know if they were going to strictly go off of like gameplay, who they were closest with during the game, because there was a lot of OG Alexas on the jury. And what I kept thinking in my head was Austin's the only Alexa left in the game. He could get a lot of votes. I probably psyched myself out of it, but I also did think it was a final three. So that kind of screwed me, because I thought, okay, either way, I'm in the finals. I think I can beat these four or the three that are there regardless. So I felt comfortable sitting there with Alex and Lilly. But if I would have known it was a final two, I definitely would have kept Austin, because it would have gave me a better chance in that last challenge that I absolutely bombed.
Yeah.
Yeah, not only was Mike in the voting confessional area for a long time, but we had a rule in the season where once you were on Zoom with us, tribal, challenge, whatever, you could not message anybody except for the hosts if you had to, I don't know, go to the bathroom while other people were voting, just so they knew like what was going on. And after Mike voted, he messaged Morgan and I and said, can I change my vote? And we were like, no, you already voted. It's already in the air. No, you can't change your vote. But I mean,
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I wanted
that too.
I don't know. I wanted to see the tie after I voted for Austin. I was like, I should have just let him challenge it out. Would have been more fun, a little more entertaining.
So were you not confident that you could beat Austin at Final Tribal, like just with your speech and your answers? And
like I said, like I know that well, at least in my head, I could, and that I think that I played a better game. The problem that, again, I was getting in my own head saying he's the only Alexa that's left in the game. Like, could they all just be like, hey, he made it through every single tribal. Like he's been through it since the beginning. Like, we're going to vote for Austin. Like, I didn't know how it would go. So maybe that's a little bit of lack of experience for me there, but yeah, no, I mean, I definitely messed that up. That's the biggest thing. My biggest regret in the game is voting Austin out. That's for sure.
Yeah. Had you won the final challenge, who would you have sat next to?
Alex, 100%.
Yeah.
And the biggest reason why is because Lilly and I, we played a similar game, but it was also like we had different strict allies. Like, I was not going to get Mackenzie's vote. Andrew was kind of locked into Lilly. But if it's me versus Alex, Mackenzie has to decide between me and Alex. And she's probably like hating her life to having to sit there and say, do I vote for Simmons or Alex? Like,
which dude bro do I vote for?
Yeah, the dude bro. So I just think it gives me because then in my eyes, it's like, okay, who does Alex have as a locked vote if it's me versus him? And a lot of them were like, I could actually have that vote. So I think it would have been a good final tribal council. But he also crushed it at final tribal council, so he could have smoked me too. So I don't know.
You said it would be a wash before final tribal, you said it'll be a wash. Alex isn't going to get any votes. And then you end up voting for Alex. Were you a bitter jury member?
100%. Granted, going into final tribal, I did think Lilly was definitely going to win. But then, like, having the whole, Alex's speeches and stuff, he did really well. And I think Lilly just did a poor job of talking about her game. She played a good game, and I don't think she represented that as well as I think she would have liked. So I was surprised at the outcome of the vote for sure. But I was definitely a bitter jury member, and but I mean that's kind of what happens. Jury management's a real thing when you're in the game, and the person that you take out right before you go to final tribal council, it's probably not on your side. So
right,
and that's
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, she made the right call, I think, but just with the way that final tribal went, like, I got voted out. I went to my little break room to talk to Alex, came right back in, and it was final tribal council. Like, I was just sitting there like, I don't want to be, like, I'm just like barely listening, like, this is miserable for me. So it was kind of like, it made it a little more like worse. Like, if I would have been able to go home for the rest of the day, come back the next day for final tribal council, I might have had a different decision, but I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, you were completely blindsided. You think you're going into final tribal to plead your case, and then Ian tells you it's a final 2, and then you
and Morgan.
Well, you're the one who said it. But I mean, yeah, of course, I would be livid too, thinking like, here, you see the jury's faces, you think you're about to plead your case, and then, yeah, you completely got blindsided. And that's why literally, I shed a couple tears. I shed tears 3 times during the season, and your vote off was one of them. We all felt for you big time.
I appreciate that.
So you said that you voted bitter, but you also said that Alex had a great final tribal council. If you had to vote again, who would you vote for?
That's a great question. I'd still stick with Alex, I think.
Yeah.
I would.
All right. At one point you said to Austin that you didn't care about winning. And you didn't expect
I said a lot of things.
You said you wanted to win, but didn't care. Didn't expect to win, didn't care. But we could clearly see in your face that you did care.
Absolutely.
You already mentioned like your face during final tribal. I don't think you were looking at your screen for even a 1/10 of that. You were just looking away. I was like, he's replaying everything in his mind right now.
Yep. And I don't know. I said a lot of things, but I did say, I did better than I expected for sure. And I didn't really expect to win, but I thought I could win when it started to get down in numbers. I was like, wow, I can actually win this. And so like my hope was just like increasing, and I was feeling good. My momentum was good. I was excited to go into final tribal council, and then it just like crashed. Yeah, that sucked.
Yeah, once you get close, you can taste it. You're like, I actually made it this far. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, I can do this. And I do think if you get to the final tribal, I mean, I think you win. I mean, maybe we'll ask everyone, but
yeah, I mean, I'd have to have a good final tribal council, but to go along with that, like, you can ask Ian. I am like an extremely competitive person. Like, I want to win everything, like, no matter what it is. So it was like me saying, yeah, I don't care if I win. Like, that was a lot. Like, I care if I win. Like, I want to win everything. So that made it a little bit harder at the end when I was like so close, and I didn't put it in my hands to win the game. Like, I lost that last challenge. It was out of my hands. I do wish I would have said a few more words there when Lilly was when Ian gave us the time to plead our case to Lilly. Probably wouldn't have made a difference, but
No, I don't.
I still wish I would have said something rather than, yeah, you'll make the right decision. I'll be good with whatever you make.
I know you guys both said that. And I'm like, she's not going to pick Simmons. I mean, there's no way.
He sat in that voting confessional for a while, though. It's like a few minutes that she was in there. I mean,
He was very tormented by the decision.
yeah, and I think someone that like is like Lilly was emotional after basically every vote because like she knows that people put time into this game, and I think that's fair to be emotional about when you vote these people out. But yeah, she sat in there for a while, and that's not something you do if you're like already made up. Like your mind's she made a case for you to stay, which was a weird case because it definitely was a case for you to beat her if she kept you. But her case was like Mike like worked his ass off to get here, like he won the challenges, like made relationships, so like he deserves to be here, but like he also did those things, so like I don't want to pick him and lose. But
in the back of my mind, I was thinking of trying to hit her with the Wu and Tony approach, saying like you need to take someone deserving to be there. Like it wouldn't work. It was a bunch of BS anyway, because Alex absolutely deserved to be there too. It was just trying to throw something in her head to say like, hey, yeah, maybe I should bring Mike.
So biggest regret in the game then is voting Austin out.
Voting Austin out was number one. My biggest regret. My second biggest regret is not paying enough attention to people's freaking stuff. Lauren's height. Sorry.
Yeah, it's so random though. How are you supposed to remember that?
And that was another thing that made me mad, was that I knew Jim was a freaking mechanic. I knew it, and it literally like blanked out of my mind when I was writing it down. I could only think of cross country coach, but I knew he was a mechanic. He gets up early in the morning every time. That's why he can't talk late at night. Like I knew it, and I would have tied the game.
Yeah.
That quiz was not designed for like a social player to come in and get 15 out of 15. Like that quiz was hard. Like knowing Zucker's wife's name and how long they've been married, like.
You want to know the biggest BS was that I actually got Mackenzie and Lauren right for their sister's name. I had no idea. I didn't even know one of them had a sister. I just guessed two random people on the cast.
I know. I saw your face afterwards and I was like, that's freaking amazing.
Well, I knew, and on the last question about Andrew's age, like Mike and Alex, I think we're both down 1 point.
I got it right.
I saw Mike's answer and I was like, oh shit, he might have tied it. And then I look at Lily's and it's also correct. And I was like, ah, shit. Well, it's also good because we didn't have a tiebreaker question. So.
But also,
so you're welcome.
All right. Well, we're going to move it over to Morgan, who has questions from everyone on Facebook for you.
And looking at the Facebook questions, I feel like we have kind of talked about a lot of these like hypothetical, like if this, or should you have done something different? So if we do skip over your question, it's nothing personal. It's just, I feel like we've already discussed it. First comment is from Alex, one of our production members. He said, you'll hear it in the recap, but a lot of us felt you played one of the strongest games this season. To help you get to the end and sitting at the final two, was there ever a time at the final five or final four where you feel you could have had the vote go a different way? I know you've already talked about like not wanting to vote Austin out, but even the votes leading up to the final five, do you feel like there would have been a different path that you could have navigated?
I mean, I think there could have been, but I don't know if there would have been one that set me up better than the one that I had, or the one that I could have had if I kept Austin. I don't think keeping Greg helps me really at all, or working with John. I mean, that working with John when he came back was a real possibility, but I don't think it would have helped me like moving forward. I think that would have rubbed Greg, Lilly, and Alex the wrong way, as if I really tried to work with John to vote somebody else out instead of working with them, and then I probably would have went next. Jim is someone I wish I could have got along with, or not got along with, I could have worked with. But I just think it was too late in the game to say, hey, Jim, let's do this. Let's go to the finals. I feel like that would have been like, yeah, he's just trying to like use me, like that type of thing, where I don't think it would have worked. So there's probably some different routes I could have taken that would have worked, but I don't know if they would have been better than what I had done, only if I would have kept Austin.
It is kind of interesting to think about, like both Jim and Austin were very tight with Mackenzie. So after she got voted out, they were both kind of like floating without any super tight alliance. After John comes back in the game, he doesn't have anybody. I mean, potentially that's 3 people that any one of the 4 of you could have basically just jumped ship and ridden that group to the end. I just thought of that right now, but
yeah, Jim. I don't know if Jim would have worked with John, but I don't know if Jim would have had a choice. So yeah, that's
true. I know, from being in the game, and I'm sure, you guys know that Jim was adamant on John and Lauren going home. Like he was adamant for like multiple votes. But then at the same time, he was also adamant on Greg going home at a certain time too. But he was definitely closer with Greg than he was with John and me and myself. So if it comes to a point where like, and Austin even said like he wasn't even that close with Jim. And I don't know how true that is, but he said they didn't really talk that much. They were just kind of like, it was like Jim, Austin, and Mackenzie was in the middle, like holding them together kind of. So when Mackenzie went, it's not like Jim and Austin went like this. They kind of just stayed there, So it's a good point. That would have been a good group if it could have worked out. I just don't know if I could have trusted. I can't trust John. And then Jim, I don't know if he would have wanted to work with me and John.
Yeah. I don't know that it would have worked out any better for you, but the thought just popped into my head and I thought it was kind of interesting to think about.
So I had some questions written down too. But while we're kind of on the topic, say on the Austin thing, say you tie the vote, Austin wins, and it's you, Austin, and Alex in the final 3. Does Austin win that final challenge, do you think? Because you and Alex tied. So does Austin get more than you, or are you and Alex tied?
I feel like he probably knew more than we did, but I also don't know for sure. Because it's not like Alex and I crushed the challenge by any means. So I think he had a better chance to win it than I did, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't. That might be a good question for him. I don't know how many he knew.
To be fair, there were questions about himself, so
that's
kind of tough to say.
Yeah.
Hey, I bombed that challenge in my season too, so don't worry about it, right, Ian?
Yep. Denny knows nothing about me.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna keep the Facebook comments going here. We have a comment from McKenna. You are someone who shocked me this season with their gameplay. I'm so glad Ian roped you into this and watching the show. Meeting you in person was so awesome. Being your partner for cards, I can see why your allies wanted to work with you. You just bring so much positivity and encouragement to those who are in your corner. Thanks for playing, and we hope to see you again.
I love McKenna. Thank you.
All right, next question is from Zucker, the other Michael. If it had been a final 3 that the jury was voting for in the end, do you think you would have had the votes to win against Alex and Lilly? Whether yes or no, which jury members' votes did you think you had based off the game you played and why?
Okay. I think I had a good chance to win if I had a good final tribal council, which in my head I did. I had, I spent that day writing some things down in my notes just to focus on. And so I think I would have done pretty well with the questions that were asked. in terms of votes, I'd like to think I get Austin. I think I get John. I think I get Zucker. I think Lilly gets Greg probably still. Lilly gets Mackenzie probably still. Lauren's a toss-up. I think she respects the game that I played more than she was friends with Lilly. But she also voted for Alex, so I don't know. But I think I had a good chance of getting Lauren's vote just based off gameplay. Who else is left? Andrew was an interesting one because Andrew was like all on the Lilly train. But I think I had Andrew and I had some good conversations, and him knowing like the area that I grew up in a little bit, and we play our colleges were in the same conference. Like I think I had a little bit of a connection with Andrew, and I would have liked to think that during Final Tribal Council, I could have kind of pulled at the heartstrings a little bit and got his vote. I don't know if I would have, but I think I had a decent chance. Jim, I don't think Jim would vote for me, but at the same time, he also said that he said before to I think it was in the edit when we watched it back. He was like, if Mike gets to the end, Mike's played a really good game. So I don't know if he would have voted for me based off of the game that I played or who he was closer with. I don't know. Did I miss anybody?
No.
Okay. I don't know. I think I like to think I win, but again, it's up to the jurors, I guess.
Can't wait to ask at the reunion.
All right. Our next question is from Jay Milligan. And first off, they said, I have to give respect to a fellow Braun. Hats off to that brother. And they requested that I do this motion that he does. So just for you, Jay. They had a couple questions, but we kind of have discussed. But one that I wanted to touch on was, how did you feel about Mackenzie jumping down your throat after your speech?
Oof. Let's see. I was definitely not happy about it. As I kind of mentioned throughout the night that, it was a long night for me. I was excited to go to Tribal. Found out I wasn't going to Tribal. Well, I was, just not in the way that I had hoped. My game ends when I wasn't expecting it. I had to sit through the whole Final Tribal Council. I had to listen to everybody else ask their questions uninterrupted. And then when it's my turn, whether it was Mackenzie or somebody else, I just felt like there was no need for anybody to interrupt anybody at that point. So I was not amused by that at all. And all I said was really am I allowed to be upset about it? And she was like, no, you shouldn't be. It was the right play. Okay, yeah, it was probably the right play, but I'm still upset I'm out of the game. And I had to sit here for the last hour and listen to the reasons why they should win the game. You know what I mean? Just a very poor timing. And I don't know. I'm newer to Survivor, but all the seasons I've watched, whenever it's time for someone to say their speech at the end, it's their time. No one else on the jury has ever said anything in the seasons that I've watched. So yeah, I was definitely not amused by that. And I think it was a little uncalled for, to say the least.
Yeah, we weren't either. It's never happened before. And I think it caught Morgan and I both off guard. And by the time we were going to say something, it was over. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame anybody for it. It is what it is. But yeah, it's fine.
All right. Moving on to a couple questions from Greg. After learning about the Zucker vote, did you consider talking with John and Zucker to flip it? From the edit, you were upset about losing an ally, but didn't do anything to prevent it.
So, no, I didn't do anything to prevent it because the only thing I could have done is blow up Tribal Council because I found out just a couple minutes beforehand. And I really wanted to, like, I wanted to blow it up so bad, but I knew if I would have, like, I absolutely would have went home because too many people were on that vote. I would have loved nothing more than to just say, hey, Zucker, everyone wants to vote for you, and they're going to vote for you now. That would have been fun, but there was just no time for me to do anything. And like I said before, people think like Zucker was like my number one or something like that. Like, we weren't that close. Like, we were friends, but like, he wasn't my number one. I wasn't his number one. Like, we were allies for sure, but like, I don't know. It was just a little odd that, like, I didn't want Zucker to go home. But if you look at how things played out after that Zucker vote, it really helped me. Like, it was actually a good vote. It ended up being a good vote for me. And I didn't even make it.
All right, his second question. To give you a chance to answer my jury question, at what point or points did you realize you were perceived a certain way, and how did you change or embrace that perception?
I mean, early-ish on in the game, I think people had a perception of me that I was just like, they probably thought I was an okay player, but I think I had a little bit of a stereotype on me where it was like, he's a jock, like a dude bro. And like a typical dude bro you see on the show that's like this guy that's good at challenges, but he sucks at everything else. Like, he's just like douchey guy. And I think I had that little, people might have those preconceived notions of me at first, but that was pretty much from the people that didn't really talk to me. So I obviously I tried to change that and just like be myself and talk to people. And then later on in the game, I think I realized that people were starting to see me as a challenge threat, and I could very well be next to go. So I had to really buckle down and be like, okay, what can I do to avoid getting myself voted out when I don't win the next challenge? And a lot of that was just, getting people to work with me by, I was open to vote anybody at any time, honestly. And, obviously I had glam, but especially early on, I didn't want to vote any of them out, and I probably wouldn't have, but like, I would have been open to the idea if someone like gave me like a real good, reason, rather than let's just vote Alex. That was like all it was. Like, let's vote Alex. Let's vote Alex. Like, no, there's no reason to vote Alex. But, I think just taking, what I knew that people were perceiving me as a challenge threat and just using my social game that I think was a little underrated throughout the season and making it not a social threat or making it not a challenge threat. So like, I probably should have been a bigger threat than I was winning all those challenges, but it never really seemed like when I lost a challenge, it was like, okay, let's get Mike now. So I think that's what I did to change that.
All right, our last question is from Derek Whiten. Out of the jury, was there a person you believe would have beat you at the end, knowing you dominated challenges and were top tier in the social game?
I do think Greg played one of the best games in the season by far. But I also think that a lot of people were like, I don't know how to say it the right way, but like, it was like, oh, Greg's playing a good game. Greg's playing a good game. Greg's playing a good game. So like, everybody was already thinking, like, it was kind of like a group thing where like one person says it and then everyone's like, oh yeah, Greg is playing a good game. But I think if we got to the finals, like me versus him, I think a lot of people do vote Greg because he played a great game. But I think I have a chance at least. So to answer the question, the one person would probably be Greg. But I think I still have a chance.
It all comes down to the final tribal council, which we saw play out with our final two. So you never know.
Yeah.
All right, so Challenge Beast, what was your favorite challenge of the season?
I really loved the three like the relay challenge. That was a lot of fun. The one where you had it was the dice, the water, and then the pong. That one was fun just because it was different. But I did really enjoy Jeremy's challenge in that it was really tough. And I don't know, it was a good challenge. I really liked it.
Yeah, I was watching it going, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to try this one day just for the hell of it because
It was fun.
So hard. All right, I've asked this question to some of the other people on exits. If you were to play the real Survivor or another org with anyone from the entire cast, who would you pick?
I would definitely want to play Real Survivor, and if I was playing Real Survivor with anybody on the cast, I would go with give me John. Give me John.
Everyone surprises me with their answers. Like, you still don't pick Austin?
Nope.
He seems like the most loyal guy ever.
Yeah, but Austin doesn't say 2 words to people. He just stays quiet. I need someone that's going to talk to, at least to me.
All right. So Austin at Final Tribal Council asked Alex and Lilly who the person was they learned the most from. So what would your answer have been?
It was who do you learn the most from the game, right? Like,
yeah,
other player. Okay. Who did I learn the most from? I think my answer probably would have been.
And only pick one person because those guys cheated and gave 2.
I won't cheat. I think a lot of it, honestly, was John. I mean, I felt like every time I was talking to him, he was playing me. Like, he was always like telling me something that I just wanted to hear and then was probably going to talk to somebody else. Like, I just got that vibe from him. And sometimes I think like I was out thinking myself, like he was actually being honest. But I think the way his verbiage is all the time is what kind of gets you thinking that way. And I think, I tried to learn from that a little bit where it's like, okay, he only says certain pieces of information. He waits for you to say something first, like just little things like that where it was like, okay, I need to like take some of these notes here. Like, what is he doing? He's played in a couple games. He knows what he's doing. So in terms of like learning something about the game, it was definitely, I definitely learned from John a little bit.
And I want to know, what's that?
I was gonna say, I don't know if that's what he meant the question by, but.
Yeah, when he said it, I was thinking like how I would have answered it would have been who I learned, something more personal. I wasn't thinking of game, but that's how the answers went during Final Tribal. The other question I had for you is how long did it take you to get over the loss?
Oh man, I don't know. There is part of me that says I'm still not over it because I text Ian all the time, pissed off. So I mean, I could still say now, but I mean, realistically, I wasn't mad after like a couple days. Like it was definitely like a couple days of like, wow, this sucks. But I mean, I still say that now, so I don't know if I'm actually over it.
Well, now you like the episodes are so fresh. Now that it's done, maybe you can like
forget about it.
Yeah, let it go.
I don't know. I might have been traumatized a little there by the end. I have to go to therapy. Thanks, Morgan and Ian.
You're welcome.
All right, give me one word to describe your game.
I feel like, I don't know if this is like a good answer, but maybe like a complete game. Like I feel like I played all the aspects of the game pretty well, and I feel like I don't know. I think a lot of people say like, oh, Mike, he was so good at challenges. He was so good at challenges, but like to me, I think my like social game was a little underrated by like being able to stay under the radar a little bit and even while I was winning challenges. So like, yeah, the challenges were great. And it definitely was a big reason why I made it as far as I did. But I think my social game was also a big part of that.
Yeah, I have to tell you, like, Ian picked you as his winner pick. And then when the season first started, I was watching a lot of the confessionals. And it got to a point where life got too crazy and I wasn't watching them. But Ian was like, oh, yeah. So I call you Simmons, called you Mike. Mike's killing it. And I'm like, is he? Like, what is he doing? Like, what am I not seeing? And because I really was only watching, the challenges and stuff that was happening on Zooms, and then watching the episodes back, I'm like, oh, like he was really doing a lot. Like you really were. So your social game was impeccable. You just were like under the radar, which was perfect. I mean, that got you to the end. So it was beautiful to see it all play out the way it did. Except for the very, very end, of course.
Except for the very end. And one thing that Ian told me, like when I was signing up for the game, he was kind of just like, you get what you put into it. Like if you put a lot of time into it, like and like really try, like you'll be fine. But it was kind of, I think Ian was also wondering like, how is Mike going to take this super serious? Does he even know like how like long and like hard like these games are, which I didn't. But I think he was excited when I actually was like into the game and like putting the hours in and like trying. So I think that might be why he was saying like I was killing it, because I don't think he was expecting me to put in as much time as I did, because I wasn't even expecting that.
Well, he did pick you as his winner pick. I think
he did.
He felt like if you did give it everything, you would go to the end and win.
That's exactly the way I felt. I didn't know whether Mike was going to put all the effort needed in. But like, yeah, I fucking knew what was going on. I was watching stuff the day it was coming in. I knew what was happening. But yeah, I put you and Austin both in my I mean, I had 4 of the final 5 right. But you and Austin were both there. And I like, when I did that, I was like, why the fuck did I say that they would both make the final 5? There is no way that they both. And like, I don't know, that relationship, like people knew about it and like.
They didn't care, it seemed like.
Alex had every chance to. This game was so funny because like things that people in other orgs like would care about, like no one cared about in this game. Like no one gave a damn whether Lauren and John played a bunch. Like right off the bat, no one cared. No one cared that you and Austin like knew each other, even though you guys didn't vote together at all, really. But no one cared about that. At least Alex didn't. Like it seemed to me that people only cared about like how many relationships do you have like that are out there, and that's what hurt Greg's game and kind of propelled yours in the end. That's why you finished 3rd and you finished 5th.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it earlier, but like you were such a big threat because of your challenge wins, but at the same time, like when you didn't have immunity, you weren't in danger. Like you had allies that trusted you and you could trust. And like you said, I don't care if people throwing my name around because there's nobody to throw my name around to that's going to gain any traction. So super impressive for sure.
Yeah, because you rarely see that. Like the second a challenge beast doesn't win, they're usually voted off, but not you. Like people still wanted to work with you. So it speaks volumes to your gameplay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so fun to watch you. I'm going to forever call you Simmons, though. I hope you're okay with that.
I kind of have to be now, right?
So weird. It's so weird.
It is weird.
Mike, for 15 years, I've never called him that one time.
It's the first time I think I've ever been called it, really.
Well, I hope to someday see you play again. I feel like you could be on the real deal. So send that tape in.
I might try. I don't know if I could do the bugs.
Oh gosh, you sound like Zucker now. Just do it.
It would be fun.
You're telling me if you had the opportunity to go play Survivor, you'd be like, no, thanks, Jeff. I just don't want to deal with the bug bites.
If Jeff asked me personally, I would say yes. No,
Well,
no matter what,
I
I
mean,
would say yes.
I feel like Jeff's in those interviews deciding who gets to go. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Mike.
Thanks, Denny.
Yeah, Mike, thanks for sitting down with us and talking about your game. I think a lot of people wanted to hear this interview or wanted to hear from you when the game came out, because there was probably a lot of people on the cast who were wondering, like, why isn't Mike targeted, or like, how did he win so many challenges without getting targeted? Or even, I mean, you got one vote all season, and it was the vote that said
One I
yes.
didn't want, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, again, like, super impressed with your game. Mike has seen 8 seasons of Survivor. We were counting them yesterday. Only ones that I've told him to watch. So yeah, I mean, he's like Austin. He's like a very novice fan compared to a lot of the Castaways. And again, shows no matter how much you know Survivor, just apply for the game. It's fun. It's not that much time. Don't listen to the people who played. It's not that much time.
Oh my God.
I'm not going to sit here while you just lie to everybody like that. At least wait till I hop off.
Anyway, Mike, it was great watching you play. I and the rest of everybody on production would love to see you play again in some capacity. So if you ever get that text message or phone call, you should say yes. So
We'll see. I don't know.
But
I'm not sure.
Is there anything else you want to add before we close it out?
2 things. One, shout out to everybody on production. I know there's a lot of people involved, but you guys rocked it. Great season. Fantastic. You 3, Denny, Morgan, Ian, you guys crushed it in these interviews. McKenna, Alex, and Jeremy in the recap videos. Those are like my favorite videos to watch. I love watching them. They kill it. And then the edit, everything's great. It's perfect. The only gripe that I have is getting picked second to last in the draft. That kind of crushed me a little bit, but I'll let it slide. I was picked right in front of Will, so we'll take it.
All righty. Well, Survivor Exile Island, the episodes are over, but we still have a few things left for our content. On Thursday, the reunion will go out, and Saturday and Sunday, we will have our exit interviews with our second place finisher and our winner. So be sure to tune in for those, because you want to hear from those people. They played a hell of a game. And the reunion should be a lot of fun. The blooper reel will be just enough that you want to tune in anyway. So if anything, make sure you catch that. I am dying to see it. So we will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.